Hello friends. Did you know nearly more than 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy these stories, please hit that subscribe button and leave a like. It really helps. Thank you for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I used to travel constantly for my job. I was always hopping between small towns and mid-sized cities across the United States, mostly places people never think about. I worked as a field support technician for commercial security systems. Nothing glamorous. My job took me to random offices, little medical buildings, outdated factories, anywhere a camera or alarm needed fixing. Because my company was cheap, the hotels I stayed in were always the kind where the carpets were older than the receptionist. And honestly, I never cared. As long as I had a bed and a bathroom, I was fine. I didn't believe in ghosts or danger or creepy vibes. I had slept in places with moldy walls and flickering hallway lights, and still never felt afraid. But everything changed during one trip I took to Scranton, Pennsylvania on a cold November week. The hotel was a 3-story building tucked behind an old gas station. A faded sign outside said, "Mountain View Inn," even though there wasn't a single mountain in sight. It looked cheap, but harmless. The front lobby had a muted smell, like dust, damp carpet, and air freshener fighting a losing battle. A dull brown wallpaper covered the walls, peeling in some corners, as if the building itself wanted to escape from its own atmosphere. The woman at the front desk barely made eye contact as she handed me a key card. Her voice was flat, bored, like she had said the same sentences thousands of times, and now each word exhausted her. She told me my room was number 329, 3rd floor, end of the hall. The elevator creaked while moving up, as if the cable might snap and send me crashing into the basement. When the doors opened, the 3rd floor hallway felt strangely empty. Hotels always had subtle noise, TVs, footsteps, muffled conversations. But here? Silence. Thick silence. The kind that makes you feel like sound isn't allowed to exist. My room looked normal. Generic framed art on the wall, a queen bed with wrinkled sheets, a desk shoved near the window facing a parking lot. It was nothing special, but nothing wrong either. I tossed my bag on the bed and booted up the TV while checking emails. It had been a long day, so after a hot shower, I crawled under the blanket and started drifting towards sleep. That's when I heard it. A soft scrape, like something sliding gently across the carpeted floor. I half opened one eye, annoyed and too tired to react. Probably someone dragging a suitcase in the hallway. I shut my eyes again. Scrape. This time closer. Right by my door. Now fully awake, I reached for the lamp and turned it on. The glow filled the room softly. I stared at the bottom gap of the door, and my chest tightened. A folded piece of paper was sticking out from beneath, pushed from the hallway side. That jolted me straight up. I walked over slowly, crouched, and picked it up. The paper was stiff, like it had been handled roughly. I unfolded it. Messy handwriting, erratic, shaky strokes, read, "I've been watching you." That was all. No name, no explanation. Just those 4 words. I froze, trying to convince myself it had to be some kid's stupid prank. But the hallway was silent. No footsteps running away. Nothing. My heart beat uncomfortably fast. I checked the peephole. Dark, empty hallway. I locked the chain latch on the door, returned to the bed, and sat upright with the lamp still on. No sleep now. I kept scanning the room like my eyes were afraid to blink. Minutes passed, slow like hours. Then, scrape. Again. I stared wide-eyed at the bottom of the door. Another folded paper slid in, pushed slowly, like someone wanted me to hear the act of delivering fear. I forced myself to walk over and pick it up, even though every cell in my body screamed not to. This note said, "I watched others before you. From inside this room." My hands shook slightly. The idea that someone had been in here, maybe touched everything I touched, maybe hid somewhere. Suddenly the room felt too small, too dark, too quiet. I grabbed my phone, wanting to call the front desk, but I imagined the worst. What if the person sending the notes worked at the hotel? I told myself to think logically. Maybe this was some previous guest's twisted joke, and the staff forgot to clean something thoroughly. Maybe someone slipped the wrong note to the wrong door. Maybe. But fear isn't logical, and mine was demanding I check the room. I searched everywhere. Behind the shower curtain, inside the closet, under the bed, behind the curtains, behind the TV stand. Everything looked untouched, but the paranoia didn't care. I sat again, back against the wall, facing the door, listening. The AC kicked on. I jumped. Pipes rattled. I stiffened. Every sound felt like a warning. My heart finally began to settle down. Until the third note came. This time the sliding sound was deliberate, agonizingly slow. I stared at the door in fear, waiting. Frozen. Too terrified to move. Eventually, I forced myself to grab the note. This one had more writing, darker ink, like the pen was pressed too hard. "I'm inside the room again. You just haven't found me yet." A chill crawled down my spine like something alive. My breath shortened into tight bursts. I scanned the entire room again, faster, more frantic, more desperate. Nothing. But what if the person meant earlier in the day? What if he had been inside before check-in and planned to come back? Suddenly the walls felt closer, air heavier. I grabbed my backpack, phone, keys, shoes, everything, and rushed to the door. I checked the peephole again. Hallway. Empty. I yanked the door open, slipped into the hallway, and shut it behind me, trying not to slam it. But the fear overpowered caution. I started moving fast toward the stairwell, but halfway down the hall, something happened that made me nearly scream. At the very end of the hallway, just outside the dim emergency light, I saw movement, a shadow, a shape, like someone stepping backward into the darkness, deliberately hiding. My legs moved before my brain did. I bolted down the stairs, gripping the rail so hard my fingers hurt. I didn't stop running until I burst into the lobby. The night clerk, a different person now, looked startled at my frantic entrance. He rubbed his eyes, clearly half asleep, and asked what was wrong. I showed him the notes, his face drained of expression, cold confusion. He stammered, "There shouldn't be anyone on that floor except you. Only 3 rooms booked tonight, none near 329. Either he was lying, or he was terrified too. He offered a different room, or to allow me to check out. I chose the latter immediately, but I needed my bag still in the room. He grabbed a master key, and together we returned to the 3rd floor. He walked first. I scanned every direction, expecting someone to appear at any second. When he opened my door, everything looked exactly as I left it, except one thing. The window lock was broken. Not old broken. Not long time wear broken. Freshly broken. Forcefully broken. The clerk muttered something about maybe someone tampering from outside, but the room was on the 3rd floor. Anyone climbing up that high silently was a nightmare thought. I scooped my bag and left without waiting for explanations. I drove 20 minutes to a different hotel, one with bright lighting and security cameras everywhere. Even then, I barely slept. Each blink felt like a risk. In the morning, I called the Mountain View Inn, hoping they found something, hoping for validation that this wasn't all in my head. They told me nothing strange happened. No cameras caught anyone. No other guests reported noise. No record of any maintenance on that room. They spoke casually, dismissively, but they also told me something that froze my breathing. There is no room 329 guest check-in logged for last night. I argued that I clearly checked into that room. I described the woman at the front desk. They insisted. Only one employee worked last night, a male, and he didn't check in anyone to the third floor. My skin crawled. Who gave me that key card? Why wasn't my check-in recorded? Why room 329? I drove straight home that afternoon without finishing the job, something I had never done in my life. My supervisor demanded explanations, none I could give. For weeks, I barely slept. Every hotel reservation terrified me. I even avoided elevators because the thought of being trapped with someone watching made me sick. Months later, while organizing work files, I came across the old receipt printouts I kept from each trip. I found the one from Scranton. Except, the room number scratched on it wasn't 329, it was 209. I remember looking at that paper for minutes, trying to make sense of how I could have misread it so badly. The numbers weren't even close. The 2 was clear, the 0 was clear, the 9 was bold. I never forgot the hallway I walked down, the number on the door, the 3 notes, the shadow watching. Room 329 exists in my memory like a scar, but the hotel claims it doesn't exist anywhere in their system. No record of it. No staff admitting they opened it. No explanation how someone could get inside or leave notes undetected. Maybe that room never belonged to the hotel at all. Maybe someone created it, unofficially, just for people who wouldn't question a little off smell or weird quietness. Sometimes on restless nights, I replay everything. The slow slide of paper, the uneven handwriting, the broken window lock, the shadow stepping back, the mysterious missing check-in, the bold number on the door I know I saw. Now when I travel, I inspect every room like a madman. Check the windows, check under everything, check the peephole, keep lights on, keep shoes near bed, never sleep deeply. When I hear a faint noise in a hotel at night, my heart stops for a second, because somewhere out there, in some other forgotten building, on some silent hallway, someone else might be getting that first note right now. I've been watching you, and if they wait too long to escape, they might discover the truth the same way I did. The watcher doesn't stand outside the room. He waits inside. I work as a maintenance and housekeeping assistant at a small hotel in Trenton, New Jersey. My official title is a house person, but that really just means I do a little bit of everything, helping the front desk, fixing appliances, restocking supplies, and keeping the pool clean. Most nights it's routine. Check rooms, respond to maintenance requests, and make sure everything looks presentable. But one summer night in 2023, everything changed. A new night shift front desk worker had started a few weeks prior. For privacy, I'll call her Brielle. Her shifts were quiet, which meant my schedule got shifted to nights as well so I could assist her. That particular Wednesday night was dead even by our standards. No check-ins, no calls, no maintenance requests that weren't routine. After a few hours of small talk with Brielle at the desk, I decided to check the pool area. In our hotel, guests had to fill out a form to use the pool, and we gave out a key only after they agreed to the rules. As employees, we had master keys that unlocked any part of the hotel. I used mine to unlock the pool door and walked into the dimly lit room. The pool was quiet, the water reflecting the faint overhead lights and soft ripples. The storage closet at the back of the pool held towels and chemicals. I opened it, grabbed several towels, and bent down to grab one more. That's when I heard it, a sudden splash in the water. My heart skipped a beat and I jumped back, dropping the towels. I rushed out to see what had happened. A lifesaver ring was floating in the pool. I froze. There was no way anyone could have thrown it in. The hotel was empty except for me and Brielle, and she was at the front desk. I looked around quickly. No footprints, no wet clothes, nothing. I pulled the lifesaver out of the pool and hurried to restock the towel rack, trying to convince myself it was just the wind or my imagination. Later that night, around 9:30 p.m., a maintenance request came through. Room 324's toilet wasn't working. I grabbed the slip and made my way to the third floor. I let myself in with the master key. The bathroom was immediately to the right as you enter. The 2 beds were on the far side. I went straight to the toilet, lifting the lid to inspect it. There was no guest in the room. Brielle confirmed that the reservation wasn't until Friday. While adjusting the flapper and valves, I felt it. A sudden drop in temperature. My skin prickled. The hair on my arm stood up. I looked around for vents, open windows, anything that could explain it. But there was nothing. It was a warm summer night, and yet the coldness seemed to concentrate right around me. Within seconds, the temperature returned to normal, but the unease lingered. I went back to fixing the toilet, determined to finish quickly. Just as the flush started to work again, I heard it. A loud thump coming from somewhere in the room. My heart froze. My instinct screamed to run, but I stayed still, trying to understand what I had just heard. I turned my head toward the beds, and that's when I saw it. A figure, tall and completely black, standing perfectly still in the corner. It wasn't human, not in any way I could recognize. No features, just a shadowy outline. I couldn't see eyes, a face, or any distinguishable shape. It was like a solid void, standing there in the dim light, motionless. Then it moved. Slowly, deliberately, a part of it shifted, and my body went into full panic mode. I bolted out of the room, slamming the door behind me and almost hitting my own face in the process. My mind raced as I rushed back to the front desk, breathless and trembling. Brielle looked at me with concern. "Everything okay?" I shook my head. I'm punching out tonight," I muttered. We exchanged our goodbyes, and I left, still reeling from what I had just seen. On my drive home, I replayed everything in my head. I connected the dots, the splash in the pool, the strange cold sensation, and the figure in room 324. Nothing added up. Whoever, or whatever, it was, it hadn't been human. The pool incident had been a warning. The figure in the room. I shuddered at the memory. Even now, months later, I avoid that part of the hotel. I don't know if it was supernatural, a projection of my mind, or something else entirely. I do know one thing. I will never forget the feeling of that presence, the cold, the silence, and the shadow that moved on its own. I used to work night shifts for a small delivery company in New Jersey. My shifts were long, lonely, and exhausting. So whenever I had time off, I liked to take short weekend trips alone. It wasn't about adventure or sightseeing. I just needed to get out of my house, away from the same four walls that made me feel like I was suffocating. On one of these weekends, I decided to check out a hiking trail in the outskirts of Trenton. It was a few hours' drive from my apartment, and I wanted to wake up early to reach the trailhead before anyone else. I booked a room at a small, inexpensive hotel on Route 29. It wasn't a chain, just one of those locally owned motels that had seen better days. The exterior paint was chipped, and the neon sign flickered intermittently. But it was close to the trail, and I didn't want to spend an extra hour driving before sunrise. When I arrived around 6:30 p.m., the parking lot was nearly empty. 2 older cars sat near the far edge, and a faded vacancy sign flickered above the main entrance. The building looked quiet, almost too quiet. The lobby had that faint, musty smell of cleaning chemicals mixed with old carpet. A woman, probably in her 50s, was behind the front desk. She barely glanced up when I walked in. "Hi, I have a reservation for one night," I said. She typed silently for a few moments. "Room 212. It's already been cleaned," she said, her tone flat. "Here's your key." I nodded, thanked her, and headed for the elevator. The walls of the hallway were painted a dull beige, the carpet patterned with dull maroon swirls, and the lights flickered intermittently. The air was stale. Every door I passed had a "Do Not Disturb" sign hanging crookedly, as if the guests themselves didn't want to be bothered. Room 212 was at the far end of the second floor. When I opened the door, the room looked clean enough at first glance, but something felt off. The sheets were tucked neatly, but the pillow on the chair was slightly crooked. The lamp beside the bed was tilted at an angle that didn't make sense. A small wrinkle in the blanket suggested someone had sat there recently. I shook my head and told myself I was imagining things. I dropped my bag on the bed, turned on the small TV, and tried to relax. I had a quick snack and then took a shower. When I stepped out, the mirror was foggy and the room felt colder, though I wasn't sure if it was just the drop in temperature outside. I got into bed and tried to sleep, but something about the dark corner near the small closet kept catching my eye. Every so often, I felt like someone was standing there, even though I knew it was empty. Around midnight, I woke to a soft, sliding sound on the carpet. My heart jumped. I froze and listened. The sound was faint, like someone dragging a bag, but it came from the corner near the closet. I told myself it was probably the wind, or maybe the air conditioner. But the AC was on the opposite side of the room and made a different sound. Then I heard it. Breathing. Not mine. Slow, deliberate, controlled, but unmistakably human. I didn't move. I didn't dare. After a few seconds, I slowly propped myself up on my elbows and looked toward the closet. The darkness was thick, almost tangible. And then I saw it. The closet door, which I had left wide open, was now slightly closed. Not fully, but enough that it looked as if someone had pushed it just an inch or two. I froze. The breathing stopped. Absolute silence filled the room. My mind raced. Someone was in the room. They were real. I wanted to run, to scream, to do anything, but my body refused. Minutes passed like hours. Then I heard a faint scraping sound against the lock of the main door. A key. Someone had a key. I crawled toward the bed and grabbed my phone. The room was still, the air thick with tension. I debated calling the front desk, but hesitated. What would I say? that someone was hiding in my room. They'd think I was crazy. Then a shadow moved across the room, just at the edge of the dim light from the TV. It drifted from the corner near the closet to the door. I held my breath as it paused at the door, the key turning slowly in the lock. And then, nothing. The door clicked softly and closed. I stayed awake for the rest of the night, listening for any sound, every creak of the floor, every whisper of the air. Morning couldn't come soon enough. At around 7 a.m., I went downstairs to check out. The woman who had checked me in was nowhere to be seen. A man, maybe in his 40s, stood behind the desk. I told him what happened. He listened silently and then said, "Housekeeping hasn't been here for a week. No one else has keys. The woman who usually worked nights quit. That's all I can tell you." I paid my bill and left without a word. Driving away, I couldn't stop thinking about the breathing, the subtle movements in the dark corner, the key turning in the lock. Even months later, I still have nightmares. The hotel still appears in my dreams, always empty, always silent, the closet door moving on its own. I never went back to that area of New Jersey. I never stayed alone in another cheap hotel. The fear never leaves. My name is Marcus Hill, and I live in Columbus, Ohio. Last winter, I decided to take a long drive to visit my older brother in Charlotte, North Carolina for the holidays. I left late, thinking I could power through the night. But after almost 10 hours on the road, exhaustion hit me. Heavy eyes, blurry highway signs, my hands loosening on the steering wheel. I pulled off the interstate near Roanoke, Virginia, planning to find a quick motel. The GPS showed a cheap place just a few minutes away, called Hilltop Inn and Suites. That name made it sound nicer than it actually was. When I drove into the parking lot, only 5 or 6 cars were scattered around. Most windows were dark, like the entire place was unoccupied. The building was a faded white with a flickering sign buzzing loudly like an old street lamp. Midnight had just passed. 12:07 a.m. I grabbed my duffel bag and walked through the automatic doors into the tiny lobby. The air smelled slightly of stale cigarettes mixed with lemon cleaner, an odd combination. Behind the desk sat a thin, tired man, maybe late 50s, with deep eye bags and a wrinkled hotel uniform shirt. He barely made eye contact when I greeted him. "Rough night?" I asked casually while signing the form. He slid a room keycard toward me and mumbled, "3rd floor. Room 312, elevators around the corner." That was it. No smile, no welcome, nothing. It felt like he wanted me out of his sight as quickly as possible. The elevator ride up was painfully slow. The overhead light flickered and buzzed, and for a moment I wondered if it might stop between floors. The doors opened to a silent hallway, carpeted in a dark red pattern that had seen better days. Every door had a "Do Not Disturb" sign hanging outside, identical, perfectly placed, swinging slightly like someone had just walked by. Odd, but I was too tired to overthink. When I pushed open the door to room 312, my first thought was, it looks clean, but wrong. The lamp by the bed was tilted at a weird angle. One dresser drawer was left slightly open. The comforter had wrinkles near the edge, as if someone had been sitting there minutes earlier. A hand towel hung crookedly in the bathroom, damp like it had just been used. Housekeeping must have rushed. That's what I convinced myself. I tossed my bag onto the chair, turned on the TV for background noise, and kicked off my shoes. The fatigue hit me all at once, and I crashed onto the bed without even checking the deadbolt. I closed my eyes. I don't know how long I was asleep, maybe an hour, when I woke up to the faint sound of metal shifting. Click. Click. At first I thought it was part of a dream, but then I heard it again. The door handle was slowly turning. I sat up, breathing shallow. The room glowed faintly from the TV light, casting soft shadows across the floor. The handle twitched again. Someone was testing the lock. The movement stopped. Then a new noise. A thin scraping sound like metal sliding inside the lock. A key. My heart jumped into my throat. I stared at the door, frozen. The lock clicked once, like someone was trying to open it carefully. Quietly. But for some reason the door didn't open. Instead, a gentle push, a small creak of the hinges, a sliver of hallway light spilled in. Then it closed again. Soft. Silent. Footsteps? None. Just silence. I waited, maybe 15 minutes, listening. My ears strained for any sign of movement. Nothing. Finally, I slid out of bed and double-checked the lock, adding the security chain this time. I told myself it was probably a confused staff member who realized the mistake. But uneasiness coiled in my stomach like a knot that wouldn't loosen. Eventually, exhaustion dragged me back into sleep. 2:14 a.m., I woke again, not to the door, to a rustling sound inside my room. My eyes opened slowly, and then widened. Across the room, near the chair where my bag sat earlier, a shadow loomed. Someone was crouched over my belongings. A tall figure, broad shoulders, head tilted slightly like they were listening. I froze, terrified to even breathe. The figure didn't move at first. The only sound was my racing heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then, like a nightmare, it stood up in one smooth motion, towering over the corner of the room. My voice cracked. Who is that?" The figure's head turned toward me. A deep male voice replied calmly, "Housekeeping. Sorry to disturb you." Housekeeping? At 2 in the morning? I was too shocked to respond. The man walked toward the door. Heavy steps, but controlled, like he didn't fear me at all. He unlocked the chain effortlessly, as if he somehow bypassed it, pulled the door open, and vanished into the hallway. The door closed quietly behind him. I scrambled out of bed, flicked on every light in the room, and almost tripped over myself rushing to the door. I slammed the latch closed again, both locks this time, hands shaking uncontrollably. I examined my bag. Everything was scattered. My clothes unfolded, my wallet halfway out, my phone charger tangled around my jacket. He was stealing, and maybe something worse. I grabbed the room phone and dialed the front desk. A woman answered now. Not the same guy. "Yes, can I help you?" My voice was rushed. "Someone just came into my room with a key." "A man?" He said he was housekeeping. The woman paused for a long second before replying. "Sir, there's no housekeeping scheduled overnight. We don't have anyone here at this time." Cold fear spread through my chest. I hung up. I didn't even think. Just shoved everything back into my bag in a panic. My breaths were short. I needed to get out of that room. When I opened the door to the hallway, I peeked both ways. No one. But the entire floor felt wrong now. Too quiet. Too still. Like every room was watching me leave. The elevator seemed miles away. I took the stairs. My footsteps echoed through the enclosed stairwell, each step louder than the last, bouncing off the concrete walls like someone was just behind me. When I burst into the lobby, the woman at the front desk looked startled to see me. Her uniform was crisp and clean, way more professional than the guy earlier. She asked, "What happened?" "You look terrified." I told her everything. How the man had a key, how he rifled through my bag, how he claimed he was staff. She frowned deeply but tried to look composed. "Please sit. I'm calling the police right now." I shook my head. "No, I just want to leave." But my legs were trembling too much to walk out yet. I felt like if I stepped back into the night, that man would be waiting in the shadows. Within minutes, 2 police officers arrived, a man and a woman. They took my statement while the manager, now awake and on site, accessed the surveillance system. We all gathered behind the desk as the manager clicked through camera footage. The screen showed the hall outside my room. There he was. A tall, broad-shouldered man in dark clothes, bald head catching a sliver of light, pacing near my door multiple times. 2:05 a.m., 2:07, 2:10. Lingering. Waiting. Then at 2:12 a.m., he used a keycard. He entered. My stomach twisted. "That man doesn't work here," the manager said quietly. "None of our housekeeping staff are male, and no one should have a master key except me and the desk clerk." The night clerk, the first guy I saw, stood awkwardly behind us, sweating, hands shaking. He suddenly blurted, I locked up earlier. The master keys were all in the cabinet." But the manager cut him off sharply. "We will handle this. The police asked me if I wanted to press charges or file a formal report. I said yes, but all I wanted was to leave, to get far away from that hotel and the thing that had stood only feet away while I slept." As I stuffed the last of my belongings into my car trunk, the female officer walked over to me. "You should stay somewhere safer tonight," she said gently. I managed a weak nod. I drove away without looking back. I didn't care where I stopped next. I just needed distance. I ended up parking behind a well-lit gas station another 30 minutes down the highway. I reclined my seat and forced myself to sleep, clutching my phone tightly. But even in my car, every sound, every passing headlight, felt like a threat. That night changed something inside me. Hotels weren't safe anymore. Strangers weren't just strangers anymore. And I couldn't shake one thought. What if I hadn't woken up? The next morning, sunlight spilled into my car windshield, and for a moment, I forgot where I was. Then my stiff neck reminded me I had slept sitting up in a freezing parked car, clutching my phone like a lifeline. I checked the time, 8:47 a.m. My phone notifications were flooded with missed calls from an unknown Virginia number. Probably the hotel. Probably the police. I didn't care. I drove to a diner across the street for breakfast. It was one of those classic American diners with chrome edges and checkered floor tiles. The waitress smiled warmly and called me Hon when she poured my coffee. It felt comforting, but I still jumped every time the entrance bell rang. I couldn't shake the feeling that the nightmare hadn't ended. There was a question looping endlessly in my mind. How did that man get the master key? I wasn't sure if I wanted the answer. After eating, I called my brother and made up a light version of what happened, just enough so he knew why I was behind schedule. I didn't want to scare him or admit how shaken I really was. Then, while filling gas before leaving town, a police cruiser pulled up beside me. It was the same female officer from last night. She stepped out and waved slightly. I rolled my window down. "Hey, Marcus," she greeted, voice calm and professional. "I was hoping to run into you before you left." Her presence made my chest tighten again. "What's going on?" We reviewed more of the hotel footage. She lowered her voice. "There's something you need to know." My grip on the steering wheel tightened. "That man, he didn't just come to your room last night." She paused. He's been entering different rooms on separate nights for the past week. A chill crept into my spine. She continued. He never stole anything expensive. It wasn't about valuables. She locked eyes with me. He stayed in the rooms for minutes, while guests were asleep. I felt my pulse loud in my ears. He watches, she said quietly. He waits. And if someone wakes up, she shook her head. Then he leaves, just like he did with you. A sickening realization hit me. He was rehearsing. One day, he wouldn't leave quietly. We believe he studies victims' routines, she added, when they sleep deepest, how deeply they lock their things, whether they wake easily. He might have been planning something worse. My mouth had gone dry. Do you know who he is? I managed to ask. She glanced back at her patrol car with a troubled expression. We're still identifying him. No match in any criminal system yet. And we still have no idea how he got a master key. I shivered. She offered me her card. If you remember anything else, call me. And please, try to rest safely. She drove away, leaving me with far too many unanswered questions. I drove the rest of the way to North Carolina with every sense heightened, constantly checking my mirrors. Every dark SUV behind me felt like a threat. Every gas station stranger felt like they were staring too long. When I finally reached my brother's house, I hugged him so tight he laughed, thinking I was just excited for the holidays. I forced a smile, but inside, I felt hollow. That night, I slept in a real bed again. A safe home, a locked door. Still, I woke up several times, not from noise, just from fear. Months later, you'd think trauma fades, but I couldn't unsee the dark figure hovering by my back, couldn't unhear his slow steps, couldn't unfeel the dread of knowing a stranger entered my locked room and watched me sleep. I developed new habits. I'd double-check every hotel lock, then triple-check. I put suitcases against the door. I hardly sleep while traveling. My heart races when I hear footsteps in a hallway. Friends tease me about being paranoid until I show them the police report. Then nobody laughs. The update I never wanted. 3 months after the incident, while getting ready for work, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Officer Carter from Roanoke PD. Please call me. It's important. I called immediately. She answered, sounding breathless, tense. We found him. My heart stuttered. Who is he? She hesitated before saying, we still don't know his real name. No ID, no fingerprints in any system, but... My stomach twisted. But what? He had photos. A cold wave washed through me. Photos of guests, she clarified, in their rooms, while they slept. I felt sick. She continued quietly. You were in some of them. My skin crawled. He kept them organized, cataloged, names, room numbers, details about each person. She exhaled shakily. You were labeled light sleeper, alert, wakes easily. It was like the air punched out of my lungs. They'd raided a storage unit he was renting, found boxes of disturbing logs, hotel keycards, electronic lock bypass tools, everything someone would need to stalk strangers without leaving a trace. My voice cracked. Is he in jail? A long pause. No, she said. He escaped. I nearly dropped the phone. How? I snapped. There was a struggle during the arrest. He injured an officer and ran. We're searching, but... Her voice lowered. He's skilled, Marcus. He planned for this. And he's still out there. My legs felt weak. I slumped into a chair. If you see anything unusual, she added urgently, any sign that he may have followed you, call 911 immediately. Followed me? The thought made bile rise in my throat. We ended the call. I stared at my front door for a long time. and then I threw up the first secure deadbolt lock I'd ever purchased that same night. Every creak in my house felt like a footstep. Every shift in shadow felt like a crouched figure watching. The final notice. 2 weeks later, around 3:04 a.m., I woke for no reason. My entire body tensed. The room was pitch black except a faint glow from outside. I blinked, trying to calm myself. Maybe just a nightmare. Maybe. A soft sound interrupted my thoughts. A sound I knew too well. Metal. Scraping. At my front door. My chest constricted. My vision blurred. It was the exact same sound from that hotel room in Virginia. Scrape. Click. Scrape. Someone was testing the lock. No, not someone. Him. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and dialed 911. The dispatcher answered. 911, what's your emergency? There's someone trying to break in, I whispered. Stay on the line. Officers are on their way. Is there a safe room you can go to? I didn't take my eyes off the door. I backed away slowly, step by step, breath locked in my throat. The sound stopped. Silence. But silence was worse. It meant he was listening. I whispered, barely audible. He's been here before. The dispatcher said something, but her voice faded in the distance behind the roar of my pulse. Then, a shadow darkened the bottom gap of the door. He was still there, just standing, waiting. The doorknob twitched once, then again, harder this time. I held my breath. Police sirens screamed in the distance, closing in fast. The figure outside the door shifted, and then, gone. By the time officers arrived, there was no one in sight. No fingerprints, no trace. Only a fresh scratch mark on the lock, thin but deep. A reminder. A message. He could still get in, any time he wanted. Now I've moved twice since then. Security cameras, steel-reinforced doors, motion sensors. I barely sleep. Police still haven't caught him. Some nights, I'd jolt awake to phantom sounds of a doorknob turning, metal scraping. I lie frozen, staring at the door, waiting for a tall, silent figure to step inside and finish what he started. The worst part? He had labeled me a light sleeper. He knows I'll wake up. He wants me awake, because for him, watching is the thrill. The fear is the fun. And one day, when I groggily open my eyes in some hotel room or my own bedroom and see a dark shape at the foot of my bed, maybe this time he won't leave quietly. Maybe this time I won't wake up again.